Hello and welcome back to the Boat Shed. My name is John and this boat behind me is Antidote. I'm an engineer and a sailor with a dream of fixing up this old boat to go sailing around the world, and I've got a lot of work to do first. In the last couple of videos, we've been rebuilding some of the components on the boat, like the headsail furlers and most recently the propeller. We've also got a bulkhead project that we're going on with in there, and today we're going back inside the boat to do some painting and priming, and stick around to the end of the video where we look at one possible solution to keep this bilge dry. The first step to this painting project is going to be our primer coat. We've decided to go with the Interlux Interprotect 2000E for this. The anchor locker is going to have a lot of water in it all the time, and this is a barrier coat system, so it's designed to keep water out of the substrate. It works great on fiberglass, wood, or metal, and you can roll it on, which is what we'll do. One of the cool features about this product is it has a very long open time of 6 months, so you can overcoat it with itself up to 6 months after putting it on with no sanding. It's a nice feature to have for someone like myself that's not breaking any speed records. You might not need a feature like that, but it's nice to know that it's there. It certainly makes things more convenient. Sanding is never fun. So there's a two-part system. Has the main base coat and then an activator, and these are mixed 3-to-1. You don't have to mix the whole can, but you can if you want to. We're going to mix it in smaller batches and see what kind of coverage we get. Before we get started applying this product, let's head up to the anchor locker and check on the fiberglass work that we did up there last time, because I'm pretty sure I still have some peel ply on there. All right, so it's been a couple of weeks since we put this tabbing in, and then the peel ply has been left on ever since. We're going to get all this cleaned up and ready for primer today. The plan is going to be to apply the primer up to this level all the way around. That way, when I do eventually get the rest of the bulkhead in, I don't have to reach all the way down here to get the paint and primer applied. So we're going to do this in 2 stages. Maybe a little unconventional, but that's the way I think is going to make the most sense for me. So let's get started by pulling off this peel ply and then getting us all prepped for paint. With the peel ply off, things look pretty good in here. Now there are a few spots where there's some voids below the peel ply. That can sometimes happen if the peel ply gaps up a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but it could mean that there's some blush that's formed on those areas. We're going to give this just a quick little scrub with some soapy water just to make sure there's no blush in here, and then a quick sand to scuff up any of those glossy voids. For paint to stick really well, you have 2 options, mechanical or chemical bond. Because this is all cured a long time ago, especially the old fiberglass 35 years ago, we're relying on a mechanical bond. So we're going to give it a little sanding, give it a nice tooth for the paint to grip to. Inside the shed now, I want to start on that primer. We're seeing here, according to the temperature reading, that we are in the low 40s, and it is just about 4 o'clock p.m., so we're going to get a lot colder overnight. So I do need to get some heating source figured out to keep all of this working. So we're going to build a little tent around the boat here, a little boat sauna. We'll put a little heater in there just to keep the temperature just off the bottom, and that should hopefully help. So let's get going on that. Well, the time has come to put some primer on the anchor locker area. A few things we're going to want for that. We have a tack cloth here to clean up any last bit of residue. I have already wiped down with the 2-rag method the whole area to get all the impurities off. Now, anytime I'm working with these catalyzed paints or mixed paints, anything that gives off organic vapors, you're going to want to wear a mask with proper cartridges. So I've got mine here. We'll wear the full face today because it keeps all the squishy parts of your face protected, all those membranes, and then everything's sealed out, good to go. You could also wear a half mask if you wanted with some glasses to protect your face, but we'll go with the full thing today. Since we're mixing small batches, we have our little mixing ratio cup here. We'll put it all into the bucket here. And then I have a 3/8 snap roller. We're just gonna roll it on today, just super simple. And a little chip brush just to clean up the cans. So I think that's everything we need. Here we go. So the Interprotect 2000 requires 4 to 5 coats to build up the 10 mils dry film thickness that's required for the waterproofing aspect of the product. And some might say that that's sort of an annoyance that you have to put on so many coats. That's kind of what makes it work though, because it has so much of these little tiny mica plates suspended in the liquid. If the paint was too thick, you wouldn't really get those plates to lie down nice and flat and basically build up the shingled roof, essentially, the scales on the inside or outside of your fiberglass. So yes, it does take a few extra coats, but the performance is probably worth the extra effort. All right, so now the instructions say to wait for 20 minutes. It's like an induction time or a cooking time for the paint to sort of bake together with that additive, and then we'll be able to apply it to the boat. So while we're waiting for that to go off, there's something else I want to show you about keeping this bilge dry. Part of the reason that I want to spend this extra time working on the anchor locker is to contain all the possible sources of water. I want to make this boat as dry as possible, so if I can keep a dry bilge, that'll be great. I think it's going to be worth the extra effort. There's a company in Florida called Neptunian Sky, and they reached out to me because they saw what I was doing in one of my videos, and they have a product that they think might be able to help. So a couple weeks ago, this box showed up. Let's see what we've got. Alright, so this is it. So this is the main control box, sort of the brains of the operation. We have a power cord here, all sealed components, and then an inlet and outlet for the water that it pumps. So this whole thing is contained and sealed, so there's no chance of water getting in. Inside here we have a 12-volt DC pump and a little circuit board that controls the whole thing. And that connects to this pickup. So you see here on the bottom we have a lot of little holes. That allows the water to enter, and then it's evacuated through this fitting on the top. If we open this up, you see we have a little bit of filter media here, and then a sponge, and some tire weights just to help hold it down. So the filter helps to remove any impurities, oily residue and stuff like that, so you're not putting that into the environment. It also helps to protect the pump, and you can change that filter every couple of months. And then there's a little hold down here to keep the unit in place. The interesting thing about this product, because there are other products on the market that promise to do a similar thing, that is keep your bilge dry, this one connects to your smartphone via Bluetooth. So all of the electronics in here are completely sealed and they never need to be exposed to the environment. There's no little buttons or screens or things like that where water can get in. So in a marine environment, that's a really great idea. It also allows you to see how the pump is running and configure it on the fly without ever having to crawl down into wherever you installed this box. You can change it on the fly and you can see if the pump is running, all from your smartphone anywhere in the boat. Pretty cool. Let's go set this thing up on a little test rig that we put together and see how it does. Welcome to the basement, or I guess the bilge, if you will, of our house here. Now usually I'd be setting up a test like this in the workshop, but we've had an unfortunate incident with some excessive water in there this winter. While we're repairing all that, we'll set up down here. What I'd like to do today is set up a test for this dry bilge solution and see how well it holds up over time. So we're gonna put it through its paces right now. Here we have our simulated bilge setup. So we have a very deep well, similar to what Antidote has. Your boat might be different, but that's an ideal place for all the water to collect since it's the lowest point of the boat. That's where our main centrifugal bilge pumps will be, as well as an ideal place to mount the Bilge-B-Dry pickup. So that will go down there. Coming up from the pump, any bilge pump system should have a rise to it, a head height, if you will. This is a 76-inch to the top, 193 centimeters if you're watching anywhere else in the world. At the very least, you're going to want to have a high loop up there. Even better would be to have something like this. This is a vacuum brake. This is a GroKo version, and this would go up to the very top like so. But for this testing, this will be fine. All that does is prevent any chance of a siphon being created, pulling water back into the bilge, something you definitely don't want. So any standard bilge pump is going to have to overcome this height, pump water at least this high. This might seem like a lot at 6 feet, but Antidote has a very deep bilge. It's almost 3 feet to the bottom of the bilge below the floorboards. And then you want to have the rise come up enough so that at any heeled water angle, you still don't have any chance of water getting in. You want this to be always above the water line when the boat is sailing or motoring. The first test I want to do with the Bilge-B-Dry is to see how long it takes to evacuate that last bit of water. Once the bilge pump can no longer pump water over this amount, it's going to drain all that back down into the bilge, and you'll hear that happening sometimes when your bilge pump turns off. So that'll be the water that's left in the bilge. We're going to see how long this takes to pump it out. But first we got to get the water out of the bilge and into this sort of spare bucket. This would represent the outside of the boat. So we're going to start with our 1100 gallon per hour bilge pump. It sure sounds like a lot of water. Unfortunately, these are all marketed with ideal conditions, meaning there is 0 height rise for the pump system, there's no electrical losses, and there's no losses in the tubing, so the length of pipe that you run. Of course, none of that is ever true. So my 1100 gallon per hour pump is probably going to be significantly less once we get the water up over this top. We'll start with the battery voltage at 12 volts. This simulates a boat that's running without any engines on or any charging loads, and batteries are kind of in the mid-range. So this would be like a worst case scenario. Let's see how fast this bilge pump moves the water at that voltage. Okay, so right away I've noticed that we actually don't have the water going up over the top. So at 12 volts, about 57 inches. So not even 5 feet at 12 volts. Interesting. Okay. Let's jack it up a little bit. Okay, so here we are at 13 volts. What do we see? Well, it's moved up. Now we're up over here, closer to 70 inches, so almost 6 feet. We almost got 1 extra foot. And we're at 13 volts. 13.6 volts, sort of on the low end for when the alternator is running. And we are just about at the loop. So I think at anything over 14, it's going to start spilling over, and that would be definitely in your alternator when it's charging range. Let's bump it to 14.5. That'll definitely spill over the top then and empty this out. Let's see how much water we have left. So now we're getting our water moving here, and I'm sure this is significantly less than 1100 gallons per hour. I'm not going to measure it today. I will do a follow-up video looking at bilge pump performance later in the series, but for now we're getting the water moving. But isn't it interesting to know that your bilge pump, even though it's advertised at 1100 gallons per hour, it might not even get you any gallons per hour if you don't have enough voltage to it. Something to think about. That sound now, I can hear the pump is sucking water, and we see that there's no more water coming through the other end of the hose. But it is full right to the top there, so all of that water column now is going to rush back to the pump once we turn it off. So there we have it. This is how much water is left in our bilge after the bilge pump can no longer evacuate any more water. Now there are different bilge pump styles available. You could use like a gulper type of pump, and a hose that's mounted quite low would probably remove a bit more water, but this is just to show you that most pumps will leave water in the bilge. So that's how much water is left in our bilge at the end of the day after the pump has run. So let's see how much this is, and then we'll do a timing test to see how fast the Bilge-B-Dry can get rid of this extra bit of water. Alright, so let's get the Bilge-B-Dry set up, see how long it takes to empty out this water. Alright, so we'll run the outlet hose into our simulated overboard here, and then we'll place the pickup into the bilge. Turning this thing on is super simple. I just start up the app here, and then you can run it on timer mode or on a schedule. For this test, we'll just put the timer on, so all I need to do is let's let it run for say 10 minutes. Here we go. Just like that, she's running. That took 2 minutes for this pump to remove the half gallon of water from one side to the other before it started to suck a little bit of air, which is no problem for the pump at all, just a good time for me to cut the time off. That's a true 30 gallons per hour. Not bad volume for this little pump doing what it's designed to do. Now you might think, okay, but the original test we had to go over this 6-foot head, and so this pump got a little bit of a pass. That's true, so we moved the pump down to the ground and ran the hose all the way up to this top height. Now the hoses that they sent me are exactly 6 feet long, so that had one added benefit. This little fountain. All kidding aside though, the pump still moved all of that water in roughly 2 minutes, about 5 seconds longer by my timer, which is within the margin of error. So essentially the same time. I don't think this pump will really care if you need to move water within a reasonable head height inside of most powerboats or sailboats. A question that might come up is, where are you going to run this line to? These little 1/4-inch lines hardly necessitate running an entirely separate through-hull fitting for it. That would probably be a unnecessarily large hole in the side of your boat. So I think what I'll do instead is run it into a shower sump. This one here, in fact. So we have lots of inputs here along the top and then outlets on the bottom of 2 different sizes. And this is going to allow us to put that 1/4-inch line maybe adapted onto the smaller one here. And then all the water from the bilge in the dry bilge system will go into here and stay contained until this is pumped out by a larger bilge pump. So yes, bilge pumps into bilge pumps. So there's lots of ways to solve this problem, and that's how I'm probably going to take it down. So the initial impressions are definitely good. It does what it says it will do. It moves the water pretty expediently, I would say as well. The long-term test will see how well it holds up. The connectivity feature of it is really nice. The fact that you can use your smartphone to connect to it, turn it on or off, and set a programmed schedule is pretty handy. And I've got to be honest, it was so easy. You literally just plug the device into power and you have your phone on and it automatically connects and it's running just like that. There's no configuring settings or this or that. It's really simple, and so I like that a lot. Now I will say it does make a little bit more noise than I was expecting, but it's certainly not loud. By virtue of the fact that you can remote mount this, you can put it down low in the bilge somewhere because you don't need to access this device very often, I think it'll be fine as far as noise goes. It's certainly no louder than your regular bilge pump running, and it's only going to run for a couple of minutes on a schedule. Let's take a look at a more real-world example. So let's assume that Antidote, which it currently does, has a conventional stuffing box. Quick sidebar, you might be wondering what is a stuffing box, and it has nothing to do with your turkey dinner preparations, but it is this guy right here. This is how we get a propeller shaft through a boat. I planned here to make a segment in this video showing how these stuffing boxes work. All you really need to know is that they seal the seawater out and keep the shaft side dry, or dry-ish. They are designed to leak slightly, and if you have one like this, and these have been around for over 100 years, and it's not leaking, then you probably have it too tight. Now, I was gonna make a nice cutaway and show some details of how these work, but Randy over at Yacht Hunters has put together a really nice video. He recently replaced his stuffing box, and you can check that video up here. Just promise you come back, moving right along. So you really never have a dry bilge when you have a conventional stuffing box. The amount of water that you're supposed to let through on one of those, it varies depending on who you ask, but let's just say 1 drip every 10 seconds, so 6 drips a minute. So that's gonna end up being roughly 1.5 to 2 gallons of water every 24 hours. So what I've set up here now is a small pump to run the water back into our little bilge tank here, and I can set that up on a timer, and so we'll cycle the water back into the bucket now. And then we'll keep the dry bilge system running on a timer so that we can make sure that we manage the water. So we'll continually keep the water moving back and forth. We'll keep an eye on this whole system so I don't flood my basement, and we'll be able to see how this thing runs in the long term. So I'll leave this running for several months and we'll check back in on it occasionally. So running that pump for 1 second gets me about 3/4 of a cup. So if we just set this to run 30 times throughout the day, to run for 1 second, that should provide a periodic amount of water, roughly equivalent to having a regular stuffing box. It's going to be in larger portions, 3/4 of a cup, or 175 milliliters at a time, instead of drip, 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 but it kind of is representative of water going back into the bilge continuously. So we're going to get that programmed up here on the device, set this up to run, and then I'll get the Bilge-B-Dry configured to run throughout the day in an even manner. This little dry bilge test setup is working great now, from one side to the other and back again, so that is great. We'll leave it to run on its own for a while, and I think that the primer should be ready to go, so let's go take a look at that. That first coat of primer went on really well. Using this regular 3/8 snap roller, we were able to get a lot of paint applied, and it goes on really satisfying. That product is actually a lot of fun to work with. Despite my best efforts to remove all the loose hairs on these before starting, I still got hairs all over the workpiece. After removing those, AkzoNobel recommended that I go with a foam roller instead, like this guy here. And I was able to find a whole whack of these for a really good deal. Now you want to get solvent resistant rollers if you're doing this, and although these claim to be solvent resistant, I would say that's actually pretty accurate. They're resistant, they're definitely not proof. So these start to get a little bit soft after about 30 minutes. I'll put a link down below in case you want to get a whole bunch of these for a pretty reasonable price. And if anyone out there knows of a really good foam roller that actually doesn't melt down at all, I'd love to hear about it. Put that in the comments down below. Now the subsequent coats went on really nice with this, and as you can see, everything's looking great. So I think that's a great time to ask you to hit the like button for me. That's a way to let me know you like this video, and it also helps YouTube know to show it to more people, so I really greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks to the magic of editing, we now have all 5 coats on the anchor locker. So before we can put the bilge coat on as the top coat, we have to let this one sit for 24 hours, and then we'll scuff sand it with 220. If you're using Interprotect for a bottom job, then you can get away without sanding the hull. You just need to make sure you use an approved bottom paint in the correct time window. But since we need to wait now for this paint to cook up, let's take a look at that Bilge-B-Dry one more time, see how it's doing, and I'm going to throw a few curveballs at it. This has been running now for a little over a week, and I have no issues to report. Everything is working just as I would expect. But maybe this test is a little too easy. We're going to get rid of the nice fresh water from my house here. We're going to put in some actual seawater, and we'll see what else. Someone's got to do something about these rising sea levels. We're going to keep testing now with this seawater, a little more representative of what a real device would see out in the wild. And now, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm waking up and I haven't had my morning coffee yet, I am no good. So we're going to throw a little bit of that in there. And then, we're making dinner and we don't ever follow a recipe, and some of this rice, in the madness of the occasion, falls into the bilge as well. And of course, I'm always drilling holes in the boat, so we've got some fiberglass that I wasn't quite able to pick up and clean up properly. So that's going to find its way into the bilge as well. And of course, same thing, I'm always working on wood projects, so a little bit of sawdust. Before I sealed off my anchor locker, this little piece of seaweed came in on the anchor. And it's so hard to keep your feet clean, so maybe a little bit of sand ends up down there too. Maybe we're tied up at anchor, making a few drinks, and accidentally spill a little bit of this in the bilge too. And lastly, I pulled a few drops of that old engine oil out, because sometimes, no matter how careful we are, a little bit of that does get into the bilge. So, as much as I hate to do this. Well, now we've got a bunch of stuff sitting in the bilge, just like on a regular boat. So let me know in the comments if you think of something that I haven't included here that maybe we should add to this. But for now, let's let it run. Well, so far so good here. No problems with that. Of course, it's going to take some time for that all to mix together and maybe get towards the pump unit. So now we'll leave this to run on its own for several months, and I'll check in on it occasionally and let you guys know how it's doing. If you're interested in getting yourself one of these units, for a limited time, Neptuning in the Sky is offering anyone that sees this video 10% off any of the products on their website. All you have to do is use this coupon code, livingforsail. Pretty simple. So that's very generous of them. We'll put a link to their website up here and also down in the description below. You can check to make sure that coupon code is still valid. Now that primer should be all ready to go. Let's go get some top coat on that primer. The first coat of bilge coat is on in the anchor locker and things are looking really great down there. So very happy, and we're gonna leave the video here for today. So I'd like to thank the folks on Patreon that helped make this channel a possibility. The people whose names are now appearing on the screen go the extra mile to make sure the channel stays in production. And if you'd like to join the Patreon group, you can click the links up here or down below. We'd love to have you on board as well. If you enjoyed today's video, it's not too late to hit that like button for me, subscribe, leave a comment, all those good things. If you're new to the channel and you want to get caught up from the very beginning, there's a playlist for you up here. And if you'd like to subscribe for more of this content, then you hit that button right over there. See you in the next one. Part of the reason for me is to contain. You guys didn't really think I put perfectly good rum in there, did you? Come on.